Welcome to the Heart of Money podcast, where we discuss the personal and emotional elements of money and the impact that money has on every area of your life. I'm Austin Black, a personal finance coach that helps couples overcome their fear and frustration of financial management so they can take complete control of their money. What started as a desire to learn the fundamentals of money management has turned into a passion for helping couples work together to achieve financial success and strengthen their relationship with each other. Whether you're looking for the best strategies to manage your money as a couple, or you're tired of struggling to gain traction and want to overcome the fear and frustration associated with finances, I'm here to help, and this show is for you. Ready to learn more? Then let's talk about the heart of money. Hey folks, most people believe that in order to do anything successful with money, you either have to make a lot of it or spend as little of it as possible. And yeah, both of those are helpful, but they are not the key to becoming financially secure and independent. But there is a secret that I'm going to teach you of how to become debt-free and have financial security without the need for a huge income or restrictive lifestyle. I'm going to walk you through these strategies in my upcoming masterclass, the Financial Freedom Blueprint, which I'm hosting live once a month, and I want to personally invite you to join me in the next class. You can find out more details and sign up at freedommoneycoach.com/training. In this class, I'm going to teach you how to get on the same page with your spouse, how to take control of your money, and how to manage your behavior to accomplish your financial goals for the rest of your life. So head on over to freedommoneycoach.com/training, sign up, and join me on my next live masterclass. I look forward to seeing you next month. Hey folks, welcome back to the Heart of Money, episode 95. I'm your host, Austin Black, and I'm flying solo today. We had a couple of issues on guest episodes being scheduled, and Bob and I were not able to connect in time to get this recorded. So I'm coming to you on my own with a smaller episode today because we haven't done a lot of planning for this week's episode. But I have a interesting topic that's going to fit right in with what we have been talking about. We are right in the middle of discussing the differences in how men and women communicate about money, how the nerd and free spirit personalities and understandings of money connect together and work together. And we're getting ready to go into some more episodes discussing with our wives some of the outlines of how we have budget together and how working with your spouse is so important. So I wanted to come to you today and go over 3 tips for what you should talk about with your fiance or with your spouse, either before you get married or right after you're married. Or if you've been married for a while and haven't talked about these, you need to have the conversation very soon, because that will allow you to have more success with your spouse in your marriage with money. So that's what today's episode is going to be on, is 3 things that you need to talk about with your spouse in order to win with money. And these 3 things are things that I personally have experienced, as my wife and I talked about these things before we got married and set the foundation for our marriage with money in a very powerful and positive way. And so many times I see couples that either are getting married or have been married, and they haven't talked about these, and it causes a lot of issue. It causes a lot of frustration. It causes a lot of conflict. It causes them to miss out on the opportunity that they have to win with money in their marriage, because it keeps them from working together, from understanding each other, and from being on the same page with each other. So I'm going to take a few minutes and go over these 3 things. So if you haven't talked about these with your fiance or with your spouse, I encourage you to do so at your earliest opportunity so you can have greater success. And if you have, hopefully you'll gain some other tidbits around how to continue the conversation, because that's something else that we often don't do as a couple in our marriage, is continue to talk about the important things in money. We kind of set it on autopilot and hope that it's all going to keep working the way it should. We don't ever actually go back and revisit the topic, revisit the discussion, revisit our plan for money, how we're managing it, how we're talking about how we're working with it, how we're working with each other. And I think that is a very important piece to keep in mind throughout your entire marriage. So let's jump right into the 3 tips that you need to keep in mind in your conversation. And again, I'm going to be talking about these from the standpoint of a couple who has not been married yet or who has just gotten married. Like I said, the concept applies to you no matter where you are in your marriage. So the first thing is to discuss your financial status with each other. And this is something that is really only going to apply probably before you get married. So if I have any engaged couples out there or couples that are newlyweds, this is very important to talk about, because your financial status sets the foundation for what you contribute to the marriage, to the couple arrangement, to your spouse, what you bring to the table. And not that we are required and obligated to bring anything to the table, but in today's culture and society, it's often the case that the husband and the wife both bring some level of financial foundation, understanding, ability, resources to the table. And now that we are getting married, we are joining forces with that money, with that management, with that background and that understanding to become one unit consisting of two people. So discussing your financial status includes talking about how much you have, right? What is, if you're working, what is your income? How much are you going to bring to the household pay through your job that you have, if you're going to keep that job or whatever your work situation is going to be? What is that income going to look like? How much are you each, or how much is whoever the breadwinner is going to be? What is that going to look like for a household income? It's very important to know what the budget's going to be working around, right? What are you going to be managing? What is the amount of money that you're going to be contributing as a couple now to your family, to your household, to your budget? And knowing where you each are at. You're going to be talking about it more and more as time goes on, so you might as well start the conversation whenever you first get married or before you get married, and understand where each other is at, because that opens up the door to honesty and transparency and allows you to both be invested into the process and into the management, into the journey of your finances. But this also includes discussing what you have in savings, what you have in debt that's owed. And yes, before you get married, you individually are responsible for your savings and for your debt. But as soon as you get married, it becomes a combined effort, combined responsibility, and combined accountability to manage and to take care of that, both to increase your savings and to pay down your debt. So even I've seen a lot of times as a man and woman get married, one will often have more debt or more savings than the other. And there's kind of this at first singular understanding and perspective around what each person is bringing to the relationship, and it's often referred to as his or her money or debt or savings even after you get married. But folks, as soon as those vows are said and that pastor declares you husband and wife, it now becomes both of yours in ownership and in responsibility. And I want everyone to keep that in mind, that you are uniting both in your name, in your relationship, and in your finances. So at that point, it does become a unified and shared debt and savings and income all across the board. It's not his and hers, it is ours for everything, in ownership, in responsibility, and in management. So discussing how much debt you do bring to the equation, just like how much income you bring to the equation, is very important to create transparency and proper management. Also communicating how much savings you are bringing to the equation. All of those elements are going to dictate how you start out your financial life together, how you manage your money, and what resources you have to work with. And it's very important to be on the same page, knowing fully what each person has that they are contributing to the relationship and to the marriage. So that's the very first thing. And this honestly it breaks that ice, right? If you're having this conversation before you get married, you maybe haven't talked about this intimately and in depth. And this really opens up the opportunity and the door to have good, honest conversation and to fully understand everything about your spouse, to fully understand what you're each going to be bringing to the equation and how that impacts your future together. So I encourage you to make that your first thing you talk about and be open and honest and transparent about it. The second thing then is discussing your goals, both your short-term and your long-term goals. I cannot tell you how many times a couple will be married and will start living their life and will never talk about what they want to accomplish with their life. They each have their own ideas, their own goals, their own objectives, but they don't ever really unify that. And if they do, then they don't unify on how they're going to get there and what they're willing to do to accomplish that. It's honestly just a set of dreams for a long time. But until you turn it into goals with a strategy and a plan, it's never going to happen. And one of the biggest factors that dictates your success with your money as a couple is your financial goals. Knowing what you want to accomplish with your money is the driving force for you accomplishing that with your money. If you don't know what you want to do, you're never going to have a vision and a mission for managing your money, and you're never going to be motivated to make the hard decisions that it takes to win and to succeed with money. So having those goals in place is very important. But even more important than that is being unified on those goals, sharing the vision, sharing the mission, and agreeing on the timeline that you think you can get there. I've had so many coaches tell me that they talk to couples and they both want the same thing, but they have very different ideas and viewpoints of how and when they're going to get there. Maybe they both want to buy a house, but one wants to buy a house within 6 months of being married, and the other one thinks that they need to save up for 2 years to have enough to buy it in cash. Well, both of those people want the same goal, but they have very different perspectives and approaches to getting there, and different ideas of how they want to get there. Maybe you want to be a stay-at-home mom and have the husband be the full-time breadwinner, or maybe the husband wants the wife to only have to work part-time. Whatever the case is, agreeing upon those goals before you get married allows you to be unified in your mission and in your vision to accomplish those goals. And like I said before, this isn't about your dreams. This isn't about what we want to accomplish 50 years from now. That's important too. But you've got 50 years to get there. This is more about what do we want to do in the next year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, as we are building our marriage and working together to manage our money, to create our opportunities. What do we want to accomplish as a couple together in our early years? And what do we want to make our mission and our vision for the rest of our lives together? That's an important piece also. So to talking about your long-term and your short-term goals, and then creating a strategy around that plan is extremely important to establishing early success. All right, the number 3 thing then, and this is something that gets a little bit sensitive sometimes, but it is so rewarding whenever you have this conversation and you both have agreement around it. What are the boundaries for your decision-making process, especially whenever it comes to financial decisions? How are you going to communicate with each other around budgeting, around spending, around saving? What areas are each of you concerned about, excited about, afraid of, motivated by? What makes you want to make a decision with money, and what keeps you from making a decision with money? And along with that, what are the boundaries that you have for making that decision together? Now, not every single financial decision in your life and your marriage will require both of you to have consent around that, right? There's many things where you do not need to seek permission or approval to make that purchase. Buying gas, buying groceries, paying bills. Multitude of everyday decisions are made without exact consent and permission from your spouse. But there are certain things where you do need to have permission and consent and approval and agreement on how you are each going to spend the money in separate areas. So establishing boundaries around what do we need to have agreement upon and discuss before that transaction takes place, and what do we each have permission to do without consulting the other, or by trusting the other to make a good decision without that consulting. Because this isn't about doing it without talking to your spouse. This is doing it without needing to have that conversation. This is about trusting each other in the decision-making process, not doing it on your own without having any conversation and doing it kind of behind their back. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about trusting each other to make decisions on your own accord because of what you have already agreed upon. So this is honestly probably the hardest thing to talk about as a young married couple, but it's one of the most important things. Because if you don't talk about this, you will encounter frustrations and conflicts and aggravations because you are not in agreement on the management and the spending and the saving, and you will each make decisions that the other spouse does not agree with because they were not talked about ahead of time. So having that conversation early on is so fundamentally important, to be on the same page, to be in unison, and to have a trusting relationship with each other around your money. Now, this conversation needs to include what areas do we feel comfortable making purchasing or saving decisions without consulting our spouse on a individual transaction based. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to come to an agreement on what those areas are so that we don't need to have the conversation every time that happens. The agreement is made prior. The other thing that we're going to discuss is what is the dollar amount that we feel we are comfortable making spending decisions without having the conversation for every single decision. And then what do we need to have a conversation about? What is that benchmark that we need to talk about if the dollar amount is this or above? For some couples, that may be $50. For some, it may be $500. For some, it might be $5,000, right? That's probably reaching up there where you're going to talk about things that are going to be under that dollar amount. But what is that dollar amount that if something out of the norm happens or comes up, or we are considering that is above that dollar amount, we know we need to talk with our spouse before making that financial decision. Again, maybe it's just $100. So if anything in the area of travel is over $100, or anything in the area of, I don't want to say random, but a expense that does not happen on a regular basis. What is that expense and what's that dollar amount, and how are we going to communicate around that? What are our communication expectations going to be so that we're not surprised? This also includes understanding how to communicate to your spouse, right? Is it about asking? Is it about sharing? Is it about asking questions? Is it about presenting a plan? Is it about both doing research? How are you going to communicate and decide how you're going to manage your money? Being in agreement upon how you're going to communicate with each other makes every conversation a little bit easier. Reduces the conflict, reduces the frustration, and reduces the overall tension that you're going to feel as a young married couple, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen even if you're an older married couple that hasn't had that conversation. You're going to continue to have those tensions and those conflicts. So establishing those expectations is vitally important. So those are the three areas that I encourage every couple to have to talk about before they get married, or right after they get married, or if you haven't done it yet, you've been married for 15 years, you better go have the conversation this week. Get on the same page with each other, because you're going to change and transform your relationship with each other and with your marriage and your money as you talk about these areas and as you come to an agreement and unity upon these. So number one, your financial status, what you're each bringing to the table in terms of income if you're both working, or what the household income is in general if it's just one person. What you are each contributing from a savings standpoint, what you are each contributing from a debt standpoint, how you're going to pay that off, manage that, and be responsible for that. Number two, what are your long and short-term goals and how you're going to accomplish those so they aren't just dreams, but they're plans with a strategy to succeed. And then number three, what are the boundaries for your decision-making process as a couple? Both in the areas that you want to seek agreement and consulting from ahead of time so you can make those decisions whenever the time comes, and the dollar amount that you're comfortable making decisions either without consulting or with the need for consulting with your spouse. If you talk about those three things, you're going to be miles ahead of most couples. You're going to be wildly successful with your financial management, and most importantly, you're going to be unified as a couple in your marriage with your money management, which just makes everything work a lot easier and is more enjoyable. Hope that you gained insight and understanding around this, and if you want to talk more about how to have these conversations, Sign up for a free discovery call, and I'd love to work with you on the steps that you can take to implement these strategies in your marriage. Head on over to freedommoneycoach.com/apply. Book your free discovery call, and look forward to visiting with you. See you all next week on The Heart of Money. Hey folks, did you find today's episode valuable? If so, I would truly appreciate it if you left a 5-star review and shared the episode with a friend. My goal is to help as many couples as possible in their journey to gaining complete control of their money. Also, I have a free gift that I want to share with you for taking the time to listen to today's show. I have a brand new video training that outlines 5 steps for making a budget that will give you true financial freedom. In this training, I share how you can create a budget in a matter of minutes and make it easy to implement. Who doesn't want that, right? You'll learn what categories you need to cover all the bases each month and how to protect yourself against financial stress. You can access your free gift at freedommoneycoach.com/budget guide. That's freedommoneycoach.com/budget guide.